Supply chain heroes need more real-time business intelligence.
Thumbs up.
All supply chain heroes should support Manchester City.
Definitely a thumbs up.
We need more collaboration and partnerships in supply chain.
Thumbs up, of course.
Welcome to the Supply Chain Tech Podcast with Roambee. Scott Mears here, Global Field Marketing Manager at Roambee and one of the hosts of the Supply Chain Tech Podcast. We thank you for joining us today. In this episode, we speak with Paulo Echeverri. Paulo is the Senior Production Planning Manager and Control Technical Operations at Etihad Airways. In this episode, we discuss Etihad Airways' journey with Roambee. We find out how they are preventing the loss and cost leakage of their fly-away kits, a common challenge in the airline industry. And we also learn where else they are now looking to scale real-time business intelligence in their supply chain to deal with other challenges. Welcome, Paulo. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good, Scott. Thank you. Thanks for welcoming me.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful to have you on, and really interesting to learn more about the use case you have with Roambee and really understand, what the challenges we're overcoming. But first of all, I always like to start with a bit of an icebreaker to learn a bit more about our guest. And, when I was learning a lot about your background, it was, you look, you're very focused on aviation. I can clearly see that through your education, your career history. You're very, it seems like you knew what you wanted to do early. So I'm interested to know what this answer is if you had another job in supply chain, what would it be and why?
It's a very good question. Actually, I'm very being part of an airline, number one, and number two, looking after elements of supply chain. I think digitization in supply chain, something related to innovation and digitization of the supply chain, I would say, because again, coming up with Roambee and other solutions in the market at the moment where we're able to get real-time information, it just makes a big difference. Whether it's saving time or increasing productivity, definitely something I would like to invest my time on is that solution to the future or anything related to innovation, digitization of supply chain.
Understood. So in the innovation sector, that's really interesting to see, and it's forever evolving, and something that's what I absolutely love working within that side of the industry. Is it's always evolving. You're always having to learn and see what's moving, and it's a really exciting space to be in, but one you also have to keep up with. So it's an interesting insight into where you would be if you weren't here today in your role. I'd love to first, before we get into the meat of the podcast, I'd love to first learn a bit more about Etihad Airways. So I would love to know, what is it that makes Etihad and your supply chain different to others in the industry?
Okay, well, Etihad is, as you might know, we're one of the top airlines in the world. We are the national airline of the UAE, and we're based on the capital, Abu Dhabi. So we are part of that ecosystem that supports tourism and the economy. So the airline has a big responsibility on making sure that other industries besides the airline are also supported around. So we bring cargo, we bring passengers, we support the hotel industry, the local economy. So if you look at it from an end-to-end supply chain, working for the airline, it's a big responsibility because a lot of airlines just focus on flying passengers from A to B. Etihad Airways takes more than that. It's more about what do we contribute to the country, to the economy, and to the entire ecosystem of Abu Dhabi and the UAE itself. So what would make us different to others is that other airlines are just airlines. So they're just focusing on flying passengers, like I said, from A to B, being on time. But for us, it's more than that. It's ensuring that even if we carry cargo, or any other items, is that we are delivering things for a bigger objective. It's not just about dropping a part or dropping a passenger, that eventually the end result of that has a consequence, whether it's positive or negative. So understanding that supply chain needs to work perfectly is one of the main responsibilities of this airline. So that's what we take a lot of pride of.
Wonderful. It's really interesting to see how, you define Etihad as, different within the industry. And I always love to, learn that unique quality about a company and to understand how they stand out. And, and it really seems that Etihad, focuses on that quality to a high standard. And that supply chain is, it keeps the wheels running, it keeps the wheels running. So it's going to be interesting now to learn really in the detail of your supply chain, how it works in Etihad. So I would love to know, I'm familiar with the challenges that you were facing before taking on real-time business intelligence. But for the audience, listeners, watchers, I would love to know what were the challenges that you faced before adopting real-time business intelligence?
Yeah, well, an excellent question. And I think pretty much a lot of industries are suffering the same. Those that have not gone into digitization innovation is that we used to work with Excel sheets and manual reports. And us being an airline that flies 24/7 all over the world, most of the things that we do as an airline is support our own aircraft. So we bring spares for our aircraft to maintain the fleet as well. So besides passengers and besides cargo, we move spares for the aircraft. We fly to a lot of the places around the world where there's not much technical support, very remote areas. So on board our aircraft, we carry spares to ensure that in case something happens to the aircraft, we have something, to back it up with. So that's important because the cost of not having technology is much more and even greater than waiting for something to happen and then realize that someone made a mistake on an Excel sheet or a report to say, I sent this on board the aircraft, and in fact, it wasn't even there. It was used somewhere else. And not having that on-time information makes a big difference.
Absolutely. And it must, there must be just so much maintenance material you need as well, the vast variation of planes that you're operating with, and even just the vast knowledge that you need to be able to, deal with individual planes and the mechanics of it. That must be quite challenging as well, just having the amount of resource. And I know even that's something I didn't think of when I was, learning more, was like just even making sure that the engineer has a visa if they were to be left at the destination. I was like, I didn't even think about that. Like it gets really complex when you get into the detail of it. And it can be, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, and Scott, it's not really, and sometimes it's not about the volume of parts, but the value of those spares. So aircraft parts are very expensive. Number one, because of the design. Anything that you put on an aircraft has to have certification. So normally, one screw can be just $100. So you might think of it, if you see it on the street on the floor, it's something that you might kick around and get it off, of your foot. But we talk about screws on an airplane could be just $100 each, or aircraft computers that could be $1 million. These are the things that we fly on board. So sometimes it's not about the volume; it's about the value of the spares that we carry.
Wow, so very high value items as well. So yeah, absolutely another challenge on why they would be interesting in moving forward with real-time intelligence. And I'd love to know, before we do get into that piece, is how were you dealing with those challenges before you adopted real-time business intelligence?
Well, it did require a lot of manual work, like I said. So on a daily basis, our teams had to meet very frequently just to give updates on the status of spares that are being moved around all over the world on a different aircraft as well. And sharing reports frequently and continuously, and depending on that, someone else's report was correct, of course, but it required a lot of manual work. It was the updating of the Excel sheets, for example, and then having to meet frequently with someone, so taking time away from a busy office day just to have an update on something that was happening. And that's where, the value is also, productivity at work. A lot of manual, a lot of time wasted just to get updated reports or even inaccurate reports.
Yeah, a lot of manual work, and we see that a lot as well ourselves. We see that a lot, and it's interesting to see, the differences can make. And I'd love to know, what was your approach to increasing your supply chain visibility, Roambee? I know you've tried different sensors. What was your approach to increasing your visibility in your supply chain?
Well, we were looking for different solutions. But the solution was that we wanted something that could do two things at the same time. So, for example, we were looking at the time for tracking our spares, so GPS trackers work, right? But besides that, we wanted to get real-time information on certain things. Now, when you fly spares on an aircraft, anything that goes inside the cargo, it could be temperature sensitive. So for us, when we fly cargo, we fly airplane spares on board. Yeah, the temperature of the cargo might affect the spare. When you store an item, remember, if you buy a computer, so it's not stored in high heat, right? You cannot leave your laptop in your car. It's 40 degrees outside because it gets damaged. So besides tracking parts, we also wanted to know certain elements of how the item is being stored. We were looking for a solution that could give us both things at the same time. So we researched the market, and everyone, they offer different things, but it was finally came to a solution that will offer not just the visibility in real time, the location, but also reporting. That at any point in time, I could get a report for the last 30 days where things moved around. So in a way, with the solution that we found with Roambee, we were basically set up two things that we're looking for. We ended up with, and that's basically how we came up with the solution.
Yeah, and that's interesting to see you say that. You weren't just looking for the sensors to give us that intelligence. You were actually looking for the platform that plugs into. And again, that it's such an important piece and something, we've put a lot of time into in making sense of that data. Otherwise, you end up back in your same position with the Excel spreadsheet because you're just going to have thousands and millions of lines of all sorts of alerts. And a lot of these alerts aren't actually of interest. And a lot of these alerts, you need to make sense of and understand, okay, well, what does that mean? Why did that temperature excursion happen? Or why you can get a lot more sense from doing a lot of work with the AI with bringing that data together. And that's wonderful to hear that you were looking at that piece as well, because, people would tend to sometimes go just for the sensors and realize they need that piece at a later date. And it's just, makes the whole thing a lot harder. I would love to know then, what is it that your benefits you are now achieving that you were not before, now you've adopted this?
So yeah, going back to the same thing, what increased, what we received out of this as a result, basically we removed the wasted time that we were spending tracking fares and understanding what were they doing in real time, because we were able to set the system to tell us when it moved inside the aircraft, it will know, or if it left a certain area, it will trigger alerts. So all those issues were basically solved by having a solution that will give real-time information, because we were able to based on our needs. So a lot of times we buy products that are one size fits all, right? They sell you a product, this is how it works. But not everyone works the same way. So the solution was able to give us that we were able to configure it based on our needs. We put the trigger points that we wanted to know when does it report, at what time, how many times per day, and that obviously our productivity basically increased by 90%. We were able to eliminate manual reports, and the best thing out of them all, I can use it on my mobile phone. So anytime, instead of logging into my computer at work, I was able, even from my time off, my days off, if I needed to know anything urgent, I would just log into my phone and look for the status without having to call anyone else.
That's fantastic to hear. And yeah, just a simple thing like that, thinking that it had been loaded onto the plane and now you can actually verify that. And I'm guessing it's also, helped a lot with retrieving it also, because I know there's a lot of cases sometimes where it's actually left at the destination. Has it helped with that as well, retrieving?
Yeah, actually, it was funny because during COVID-19, a lot of airports were locked down, around the world. So actually during those times, we had just adopted the solution, and part of our business case to adopt the solution was this can help us prevent the loss of spares, right? We thought it might happen, it might not happen. Well, funny thing is, around in 2020, beginning of 2022, we had an aircraft, I believe in India, where we sent some spares to fix an aircraft there. And well, what happens is the ground handling people took this big container, put it in an area of the airport, and completely forgot about it. So our aircraft eventually came back to our home base, but we couldn't find the spares. Well, funny thing is, no problem. We logged into the system and we found exactly what it was. It was by mistake they sent it to a wrong warehouse inside an airport in India. The container was basically confused with another baggage container, even though it had labels and everything. But we were able to tell our representative in India and the specific location, send the GPS coordinates, go look for it. And within 2 hours, we have it. The values inside this container were over $2 million worth of spares. So in the meantime, I show my boss, look, we found it less than 2 hours. This would have never happened if we wouldn't have anything like this.
That's, that for me, when I hear lines like that, that really hits it home for why, I work within a company like Roambee, because, $2 million, without that, it would have taken much more time to find it, maybe never found, and that's a lot of money to be lost. Yeah. So that's, and that's quite a good thing to overcome.
Yeah.
And how has this evolution in the company changed your thinking and strategy when you now think about your supply chain for the future?
Yeah, well, I think supply chain was never as important as it is today. And maybe given to the point that maybe COVID-19, the pandemic was more of an element of that, where it made people realize how important your supply chain is. A lot of it, people just thought, supply chain, just moving parts, moving cargo around from A to B. But now that we're seeing the effects of the pandemic, understanding where your spares are going, why are they delayed, it makes a big difference for any business today. Even it's been so long since we came out of COVID, but the effects of COVID are still being felt all over the world. But at least giving us the confidence that we can always see where our spares are going and what they are. The ones that we're tracking with the solution, it gives us the comfort that we don't really have to worry too much.
Absolutely. And how are you now looking with, now you've sold, or very much you've dealt with those challenges that you were facing. How are you now looking to scale that real-time business intelligence to deal with maybe other challenges within your supply chain you're aware of?
Yeah, actually, it's good because we recently started this as a very small project, right? And all during COVID, at the very beginning of COVID, it started as a very small project. We were trying to prove the point that we use this, small solution that is basically invaluable compared to what you're carrying on board. Anyway, the case went through, and we started really small. But as we were coming out of COVID, we found that we had already a lot of good cases where we were able to prove that the solution works. So now, instead of just tracking our spares on board the aircraft, we've now used the solution to even track our ground equipment. So we use a lot of equipment to move engines on the ground. They don't leave the airport, but sometimes our engineers and technicians, they're looking for a high lift equipment. And imagine the size of an airport, a mega hub. If you only have, let's say, 4 high lift equipment, they can be all over the airport, and then you're going to spend time looking for, one. So we've now used the solution to even track some of our expensive equipment, the critical one, and now everyone is able to plug in when they come into the shift. If in particular they have a task plan at work where they need the equipment, they know where it is. So that is now expanded outside of the aircraft, using it for our G.
That's really interesting to hear how you've evolved that to look at other challenges. And absolutely, airports they're no small places. They are very large, and there's a lot of places where items and equipment can be hiding. And I'd love to ask an additional question on that. Now I'm thinking about it is how is when companies are looking to invest in this this sort of technology and the solution, one of their worries can be yes, at top level, this is great. I can see the visibility. I know everything is, but the people on the ground who have done the same thing as they've always done, the way they've operated, now suddenly have this app, and they have to, get their head around that, understand how have you found that evolution in the net?
Well, yeah, excellent question, because it's very true. My airline, my organization has gone through a major digitization strategy for the last 4 years. And the culture is one of the most difficult things to change, because they might get used to those Excel sheets and they find them completely acceptable. So when we talk about change, we talk about the business of the change. So whenever we introduce any change related to digitization, we sell what is the case for change. So we need to sell it. How do we sell it to the end users? So anything that we do related to innovation and digitization, we build a case for it. So we take examples of things that, hey, you might be doing this today, but imagine if we do this and now you don't have to do any of that. So we tend to, so for everything that we do, we run workshops with end users and give them the examples. We put them together in a room and says, what are the issues that you face today, for example? And they explain, what are the issues, the time they spend. And with that information, we build a case. Hey, we have a solution, and it will do all this for you, and you don't have to do any of this. Instead, you can focus on something else. So this is when they're able to actually see that, oh, this is interesting, because if not, you're just buying another piece of equipment, and they really use it, maybe not. And this is something that happens very frequently, where companies spend a lot of money, and this is the case for even us, where if you don't have an approach to digitization, how are you going to sell it? Build the case for it so that you can convince the end users to use it. It's not going to work. So that approach needs to be there. It needs to be a strategy every time you bring change. Like you said, it's building the case.
That piece there for me is the biggest learning already in this episode. I think that's something I, see a lot of companies don't factor in as much, and don't take that as much into consideration of how valuable that is. This technology, we know it's, we know that, that's going to deal with the challenge, but the reality is, if the boots on the ground, don't understand or aren't on board, then it's not going to get used. It's not going to get used. It's not going to get implemented correctly. And so it's so nice to see again Etihad valuing that, and I love how you bring them in, make them part of that journey rather than just sort of coming and say, right, this is now the change. I think really we've answered the next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, just in case you want to throw something else in there. Is what would your advice be to other companies in the industry facing similar challenge to Etihad Airlines, who are thinking about investing in real-time business intelligence?
Yeah, well, great question. I always go for the 2080 advice. Where do you spend 20% that it can deliver 80%? So a lot of businesses, especially a smaller business, with tight budgets, they focus on the one-time cost, but tend to forget what is the cost of not having that. And I understand there might be solutions that are extremely expensive that will make someone think, well, maybe can we live with it? But you always got to look at, where do I spend 20 to give me 80? And that's always the best approach especially for those companies that are, lean and low budget, that are trying to get, a big advantage for something very small. And this is a perfect example, because compared to what we carry and the value of things, what we're spending is peanuts. And it might be a one-time investment that is, even though it's small for such a big airline, but if you were a small airline or a small company, again, you always got to think of what will be the cost of not having it, in the long term. So we need to start thinking it's ahead, and in the future is either your ROI or the value of the, because being something small, but the benefit of having it is huge.
Absolutely. I love that 80-20 rule as well. That's a really good way of visualizing really where you need to focus your attention on, really the value you can gain back. So thank you so much, Paulo. That's a really interesting answer, and I think a lot to take away from for everyone else in the industry and even other industries looking to explore this solution. I would love to finish the episode with a fun segment we like to do. It's a thumbs up, thumbs down. It's very simple. It's just, if you agree with it, it's a thumbs up, and if you don't agree, it's a thumbs down. And if you could both put your hand up, thumbs up, thumbs down, and also audibly say it, thumbs up, thumbs down, and that will allow both the watchers and the audio listeners to know what your answer was to the question. And there may be some funny ones in there, and there may be some hard to answer. So we'll see where we go with this. And if I say supply chain heroes, I mean everyone who works in supply chain. So it'd be 6 fire questions. So supply chain heroes need more real-time business intelligence.
Thumbs up.
All supply chain heroes should support Manchester City.
Definitely a thumbs up.
Controversial one. Supply chain heroes need to become better at predicting disruption and risk.
A key element in supply chain prediction. So definitely thumbs up.
All flight delays are caused by supply chain.
There we go. It's actually not true. Not true. But when it does, it gets very expensive when you realize that your supply chain failed.
I bet. Yeah. So our first thumbs
that
down.
Could be both. That could be a thumbs up and thumbs down, but
bit of a
not always a supply.
If it is definitely not, yeah. Companies need to become more sustainable.
Definitely a thumbs up. Definitely a thumbs up. I mean, that's key, and especially for the future. The point of stop printing and wasting valuable resources. Sustainability is not just about paper or CO2. It's about saving other resources as well. How to be lean and more effective. At the end of the day, you save in some way or another. But being sustainable, definitely, supply chain will be a big element.
Absolutely. And the final one is we need more collaboration and partnerships in supply chain.
Definitely. And that's been thumbs up, of course. It's been one of the key elements for my organization, the way we collaborate and partner with, you just don't see, even if you see another airline, they're not always competition, on a commercial side of business, yes, there are competitions, but as an organization, as a supply chain to supply chain or business to business, there needs to be more collaboration. And this is happening all over the world when we realize that besides having a commercial agreement or competition in some way or another, being able to collaborate for an end result of something greater than that is much more important.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful way to finish off the episode. And I thank you so much, Paulo. It's been a very interesting episode. And I feel we've dived into a lot and learned a lot. So I know the audience are going to love this one. If we could just finish off the episode with a little wave to the camera and
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Hi, my name is Scott Mears, and I'm one of the hosts of the Supply Chain Tech podcast with Roambee. On this podcast, we talk to supply chain heroes from around the world about everything, ranging from the disruptions related to supply chains, their personal experiences with tracking technologies, strategies to build resilience, and much, much more. We already have some recommended videos for you to the side of me, and if any of this sounds interesting to you, do subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss another Roambee video. I'll see you next time.